Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. I am so excited to have you here with my friend Nicole. We just met, but now we're friends. That's how it works. We're going to be getting back to listening to understand. This is designed in a conversation standpoint of being at the kitchen table, where we are two friends asking questions to understand each other. The rules are we can't yell, we can't scream, we can't talk over, but we are asking questions to understand the other person and their point of view. We're inviting you to be the fly on the wall who is able to come in and listen to how we're going to have this conversation. So today, Nicole is going to be talking about trauma and how trauma and self-care work together. So Nicole, I'm going to have you take it away, and then I'm going to ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so a little bit about my background. We became foster parents about 12 years ago, and
Okay.
started walking through some things, learning about trauma and how trauma affects kids, first of all,
Right.
and really learning how developmental trauma works and that sort of thing. And
Mm,
then we became adoptive parents for a sibling group of five who have a very traumatic background. And so we really
mm,
dove in a little bit deeper into that. But the one thing that we never learned about, I guess, in our training or along the way was how stepping into trauma with them would affect us and our bodies. And so for me, all of my thought process was focused on my kids, helping my kids heal, helping them with their trauma, helping support their bodies, right? Like helping
right.
making sure that they were getting good nutrition and movement every day, because we know that as we empower our bodies, trauma affects the body.
Right.
And so as we help support their bodies, right, it helps them be able to work through more things, or to be able
Mm,
to learn
mm,
regulation tools and that kind of things, because their body is equipped for that. But the
right.
one thing that we never learned along the way, that I learned kind of the hard way, is that I need those self care tools too, because stepping
Yes.
into their trauma is affecting my body just as much as it's affecting their body.
Yes. It is the hardest. Okay, so I have so many directions where we can run this through.
Yep.
A little bit about, like, I know people listen, they're gonna be like, Denisha, stop talking, but no. With my foster care background and being a foster youth and a guardian of my five siblings, I never recognized how to actually take care of myself and then be like
Yep.
the mom in the room. But a ton of women would always say over and over and over again that it was so hard to be cared for and to
Yep.
really know what we needed. But I also found that this was really hard for the husbands too. So
Yeah.
as foster parents, as adoptive parents,
Yeah.
as someone who is loving on these children, your children, how how did you even recognize that you needed self-care, and where did you start to
Yeah.
recognize, like, just walk me through that.
Yeah. I tanked. Like I was at rock bottom. I
Mm,
needed a 2 hour nap every day. My mental health, like I was literally in the closet, like praying to die,
mm,
because my mental
mm.
health, my anxiety, my depression, I
Yeah.
mean, everything. I mean, because, the way we care for our bodies or don't care for our bodies really affects every part of us.
Yeah.
And so, especially as we're stepping into hard things, and it's not just, the thing that we stepped into was parenting adoptive kids, but really it's any hard thing that you're putting your body and
Right.
your system through, any kind of stressors, if you're not paying attention. And so it started to affect my mental health, my
Yeah.
physical health. I gained like 50 pounds in
Mm.
like 2.5 years.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and because the way that I was coping with the stressors of the day was, I was like, oh, well, I survived today. I need a brownie.
Food.
I need two brownies.
Candy.
And
Done that.
I
Sorry.
just wasn't paying attention, right? I wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention to, and we view that a
Yeah.
lot of times, the way
Yeah.
culture has talked about self-care and kind of the conversations about self-care, that is considered self-care. Like
Eating your favorite
oh, you need that
foods.
brownie at the
Mhm,
end of the day.
mhm.
That's your
You need
self-care
that
for today.
wine, you need that
You
spaghetti, like,
need,
your
yep,
favorite food, you
yep,
go get your favorite dessert. Yeah, yeah.
yep.
Mhm.
And that is considered self-care. So I thought I was doing self-care. But my weight had increased, my blood pressure was sky high. Like I was
Mm.
starting to have heart palpitations, like my physical health
Yeah.
was really, really declining really, really fast. And so I had to make a change because it was going to kill me. I was scared I was going to have a heart attack.
Mm. Okay.
And interesting enough, my husband did have a heart attack. Um,
Oh my god.
and because, I mean, and it wasn't just that, but it was just the fact that we are living in a pressure cooker basically
Yeah,
with all
yeah.
kinds of stressors, but we
Mm.
had no idea how to care for ourselves
Yeah.
in the midst of this.
And people, what I don't think people realize is someone's going to go, "Oh, it's because of your kids." It's like, no.
No.
It was the exposure to secondhand trauma. It was
Yeah.
exposure to a foster care system
Yeah.
that we know is a lot. We have lots of
Yeah.
words for it.
Yeah.
um Not knowing how to cope, thinking we're coping correctly, and then
Yeah.
like we're making our body worse without really realizing, because we think we're doing self-care. And then in my head, and this is what I've said, and I know someone listening to this who's going to be like, I hate that you called me out, is that in our head, what we then do is, well, we don't have time for rest, for
Yep.
eating well. I don't have time to think that. I don't have time to deal with their behavioral issues. I just don't have it in me.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry that I know who's listening to this right now, and I know this person's listening and they're going, I hate you so much for calling me out. But it is that, like, I don't have the emotional mental capacity to even try different. And I've been
Yes.
there. I'm calling myself out because I'm the one listening to myself, and I'm like,
Yes.
shoot, I have done that. To then it leads to anxiety, depression, panic, other health issues, heart attacks, high blood pressure. And sometimes we don't connect the dots to all of that.
Yep.
So you said you were in your closet
Yep.
praying to
And
die. Like,
yeah.
holy moly. I was going to
Yeah.
say, holy crap. I can say that on my show. It's my
Yeah.
show. I can say what I want. So, what made you go, okay, there has to be different?
Well, I mean, I couldn't sit there anymore. And I
Mm,
think
mm,
part of it, my community really rallied around me. My husband was like calling my friends like, "Hey, you need to
mm,
you need to check on her. She's not okay." And I just knew we had to do something different. This was not working.
mm, mm,
So I went all in. And the first thing I did actually was probably the worst thing that I can do.
mm.
Because when you gain weight and your blood pressure's high, what do you think? You think I need to go on a diet. And so I went on this like really restrictive diet.
My eyes are like, oh god. If you're listening and you can't see my eyes, I just started like looking around, because it's like, how many times have we been pressured to do that? Like, feel the
Yeah.
pressure to do that, and it actually hurts our body more. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
because if you're in that, if you're under that stress, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't go without because that puts your body in more stress. And so
Mm,
the thing that my body was struggling with was stress. And like you said, it was not stress from my kids. I mean, even if my kids had no behaviors, no background trauma, just taking care of a large family
is rough.
is a stressor,
It is a
right?
stressor.
And
Yeah.
and
Financial
so
stressors in addition to
I
that,
mean,
or
just
anything else.
just
Yeah.
yeah, all
Yeah.
kinds of all kinds
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
stressors. But we quickly go into this diet mode. So I went into this diet mode and I'm like, I feel worse. Like
Mm.
I feel way worse.
You said it was a
Uh,
restrictive diet. Can you explain what that looks like? Because there's a
Yeah.
difference between getting the right nutrition and going on a
Yeah.
restrictive diet. Can you
Yeah,
explain
so
that?
it was the program that I was on was like somewhere between 8 to 1200 calories a day.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Okay. That's not
And
rich.
very
That's
specific about what you were, but I was thinking like I need change fast, right? So
yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
I'm going all
Yeah.
in.
No judgment at all, because I've done this. Like,
Yeah.
that's really, I've never heard of it being, well, not that I've never heard. I
Yeah.
it is a shock to the body to go that low.
Yes.
but I understand where your mindset is. I need change fast because I'm the same way. So I'm like, fix it now. I don't
Yeah,
want to
and if
wait.
I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna go. I'm the jump
I'm
off
all
the cliff
in.
kind of
I'm
person.
all
Like I'm
in.
going all in.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. Okay.
Yeah. So
Continue. Oh my.
so way worse. It was
Yeah.
way worse. And trying to do cardio, putting a lot of cardio in there. I did some like fitness classes that were kind of extreme, like get your heart
Mm,
rate up as high as you can for an hour long, right?
okay.
And was just trying to go all in, and it was not working. Like I was going to pass out, and I was not able to do what I needed to do
Right.
every day. Because here's what was I haven't talked about throughout this process is I wasn't able to parent my kids well. And not
Mm,
that I wasn't showing up for them, not that I wasn't providing them the necessities and that kind of stuff, but I wasn't able to really, during this season, I wasn't able to really connect and be patient and
mm,
be the steady force that they needed me to be,
right.
because my own system was going haywire. And
Mm,
so at this point, my husband was like, "Nope, this isn't working."
yeah.
And so I had a friend who kind of introduced me to another idea, right? Like,
Mm,
don't go that way. That's not
mm-hmm.
working. But here's kind of a system. Here's a program you can look at that the goal is not to eat less, but it's actually to eat more and to make sure that
Yeah.
you're eating consistently
Right.
because I mean, as foster and adoptive parents, we train to empower our kids. And we know that one of the things that empowers our kids is to make sure our kids are eating, especially protein, every 2 hours because
Yeah.
it keeps their system from going into fight or flight. Because when there's hunger, when that blood sugar drops, the system automatically goes into the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was happening. And so this program was having me eat every couple of hours, lots of foods, but nutritious stuff that was fueling my body. And then doing very targeted, like strength training workouts and walking.
Mm,
And it made such a huge difference, not
yeah.
just in my physical health, but my mental health and in my parenting. And one of
Mm,
the things that was so crucial for me is that I think I've kind of got maybe a small taste of what my kids feel on the
mm,
inside. And even more empowering to
mm-hmm.
know that I know how to empower them
Yeah.
best.
There's so much there. And the first thing I think of some people who might be listening is like the first thing is your husband called your friends. Now, what would your advice be for someone who does not have a community?
Yeah.
Who can they call on?
Yeah.
Where
Well,
would you start? How would you build that? Where would you go? What would you say to that?
yeah. I would say one, everybody needs community
Mm-hmm.
because the relational part of it is part of what helped me heal. I don't think I
Mm,
could have my body system, my health would not have improved solely by myself.
100%.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I needed relationships that I can tune into. And listen, where people are going to go to find that is going to be different for everybody. The
Right.
majority of my relationships come from like parents of my kids' friends because we're in natural community
Right.
together. But the other side of it is church has been huge, like for me to be able
Yeah.
to connect with people that I relate to or whatever, that we
Yeah.
have commonalities. But where people go to find that is going to be different for everybody. But I would say that's almost more crucial than the food or the working out or anything like that is
Mm,
having my relational needs met. um,
yeah.
because my kids can't be that relational need. And even my husband can't meet all of those relational needs.
Right. And I think something that I've come to understand a lot more is There is a huge difference between texting a friend
Yep.
or a friend online, messaging them or voice messages, and someone physically sitting across from you
Yep.
while you're in the deepest, darkest place that you're in. And I realized I'm a little bit more extroverted than I thought. I'm like, I can't extrovert hard like some
Yeah.
of my
Yeah. Yeah.
extroverted friends, but I'm made for community. In that,
Yeah.
as a Christian, I firmly believe, like it's all over the Bible, as it says, we are made for community. We are made
Yep.
for doing life together. We are not supposed to do this on our own. But what I come to find is that it is scary to come to someone and say, I'm in my dark place right now.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to see healing, like you said, without having that ability to sit across the table with someone and say, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And it is like that is needed more than food and diet and exercise as much.
Yes.
And it's like sleep is
Yep.
a necessary thing. Community is a necessary thing,
Necessary.
especially in the foster care community, in the adoption world. Like we do need people who understand what we're going through, but sometimes it's nice to not have someone going through it with you, like not at the same time with you. And sometimes it's fine where you're just like, okay, we can both talk about this and be like, man, this is really hard. But there's those moments in the deep, deep, dark place that it's not helpful when people are like, oh, I experienced this too. Like you're putting more weight on them when it's not that time yet.
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian, some people know the Job story. So in the Bible, there's a whole thing called just go to Job. It's one of my favorites. But there's this moment.
Basically, any part of Job, it's all the same.
Just start at the beginning and then go to the end. But it really is. There's this moment that I get really upset. There's two moments that I've come to. First, I used to be like, oh my God, I just focused on Job and that's how I felt. I felt like Job. But then
Yeah.
it's like I was like really pissed at his friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, because for 7 days they sat with him and wept with him. They sat with him well. And then they opened their mouths. And I was like, dude, like
No.
basically, long story short, Job's friends start saying, like, oh, you must have caused this. And like we do that. It's like, well, did you work out? Did you eat? Did you drink milk? Did you drink water? Did you go to
Yeah.
counseling? Did you do this? And sometimes it's like the deepest in my hurt, I'm like, shut up. Shut up. Just
Yeah.
shut your mouth. But then there's these other two things that have recently stuck out. Is I used to get really angry at the wife because she was like, well, just curse God
She
and,
was the
and die.
worst.
But I'm like, but hold on, like there's this moment that I had like compassion for her for the first time
Yeah.
reading it, because I was like, oh wow, like she lost everything too.
Yeah.
And she must have been in that, like that grief. Like sometimes we do that where we're just like, okay, will you just shut up and stop complaining? And it's like, oh, we've done that to
Yeah.
people. But then
Yeah.
there's this another one that I was like, I can't even believe this happened. Is a younger person who was a stranger to them. He knew who Job was, came in and was like, how come none of y'all have said this to this person? And I'm like, why do we have all three people? Like we've all done this, but we do this in someone's deepest, darkest moment instead of just saying, okay, what, the one of the things I've learned is one of the worst questions to ask someone is, what do you need? And it's like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
instead saying, I'm sending dinner to your house, I'm going to be right over. I feel like I'm going to eat. Did you want anything from this place? So there's not options to have to filter through and think through. It's
Yep.
just someone sitting and showing up with you and showing up well, and then not saying, like, hold your opinions 6 months down the line after they're out of the darkest and say, I did have questions, just didn't feel it was appropriate. But I think we all are wired to try to fix it fast. Like you said,
Sure.
we were trying to get a quick solution. And there are moments, especially I have found in the foster adoptive world, that sometimes though there is no fix. And it is simply sitting and waiting and grieving that, and
Yep.
then working through it over time. So
Well,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say, sometimes I think in the foster and adoption world, a lot of the online communities can be really
Yes.
harmful
Yes.
because somebody will say something and try to get people to relate to them or whatever, right? Because they want people that understand, but it turns into like a complaining session and nobody is offering any hope.
No.
Like nobody is saying like providing encouragement. It's just a bunch of complaining.
Yeah.
Which ultimately doesn't help anybody.
Well, and that I experienced that a little bit the last week, and I know some people they meant no harm by it, and I even told them, I'm like, you're not being harmful by asking. But I had a panic attack, and it was like a couple of days. I've never had it last that long. And so several different people were like, did you try this? Did you try that? Did you do a bath? Did you do this? Do you did that? And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not helping. And then it was like, well, if you just pray, and like it's always a particular family member who messages or leaves comments on my stuff that goes, if you just give it to God. And I'm like, I've been doing that. Like, it's not, like, I'm just like, nobody is helping. And I
Yeah.
finally looked at my husband and I was like, I just needed someone to listen.
Yep.
And that was what I was needing from this person.
Yep.
And I even said that to a few people. I said, I just need to be heard of what, like,
Yep.
what I'm feeling. I'm not looking for a solution. I'm not looking for advice. I just need to be heard. And that's where I don't think we're good at. Like, we don't know how to handle someone grieving. We don't. And that's what we need to get back to is like, so what would, if you were to show someone like, they're like, hey, I want to walk with you through this, what
Yep.
would you say this is how you could walk with me well, instead of doing what we see in the community right now of now this person's adding on their stuff and then the person's kind of just leaving like, I got nothing. I
Yep.
just feel all the weight of the world.
Well, a couple of things that were really helpful for us, that I think felt very vulnerable, but were very, very helpful is
Mm-hmm.
there were times where my kids would have bad meltdowns just as they were processing things.
Mm-hmm.
And and for me, I felt very alone in those moments, and it made me anxious because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know exactly what to do. I mean, I know what to do. I have all the training tools and that sort of thing, but still you're left in this going, how do I really help in this situation?
Yeah.
And in those moments, I had a couple of people that I could call that would come over and sit with me through
Mm.
the turmoil.
Mm.
And they were supportive of me. They were supportive of my kids. They weren't
Mm.
at all judgmental to anybody. It was safe people that I trusted with that information and that my kids trusted with that information. But to be able to have somebody there in those anxious
Mm-hmm.
moments, just to sit and to be another person, was really, really helpful. Or, I mean, I know you had already mentioned like saying, hey, I'm going to bring dinner over.
Mm.
Or one time, I mean, our church said, hey, we planned a weekend getaway for you and your husband. We've already set it up for your kids to go to this person and this person and this person. And we're going to go with you. I mean, you can go to dinner with us and we'll do, you know what I'm saying? And so it was like they provided that respite for us,
Yeah.
but within community. They didn't say, "Hey,
Here's a
go
random
spend
stranger.
time by yourself." And sometimes you need that. I mean, sometimes you need time by yourself too, but they really wanted to wrap around us and provide friendship.
Can I ask a couple questions because things are
Absolutely.
rolling through my head?
Yep.
So, when it came to you inviting someone into your space, did you? Okay, so let me. I'm going to probably ask this two different ways.
Yep.
When you invited someone, you said that you trusted, that the kids trusted to be in the messy. Were they also there to step in and take control, or
No.
what was the boundary rules that you set with that?
I don't know that we ever set up boundary rules,
Mm-hmm.
but
It was just known.
they weren't that kind of a person, right? Like it was
Mm-hmm.
people I knew that could just sit.
Okay.
Um and
Just to sit with you, just to be there, to be
yeah,
present, not to
because
step in.
sometimes that is those moments were some of the most anxious for me. And I
Yeah.
think when we get anxious as parents, a lot of times we don't respond the way that we should respond, or
Yeah.
our bodies aren't as calm and we can't logically think through things as well. And so, some of my kids had some really big behaviors. And so
Mm.
sometimes that would make me anxious. And just inviting somebody in for two reasons. One, just to sit with me. And again, we didn't go through rules, but it wasn't people that I felt like were going to step, and they would never, I mean, we never had
Yeah.
to have any of those conversations because they never tried to step into the actual situation. They were
Yeah.
just there for me. Um,
Yeah.
but the other part of it is like, it was nice to not hide that part of our lives.
Yeah. I was gonna say that was the other question is just like how okay, so you didn't they was just a known thing. Like I'm just asking your role here is just to sit with me.
Yep.
Not to step in, not to give me opinions, not to condemn me for how I acted. Like
Yeah.
not to like, well, you could have handled that better. That's not what they were there for. And they understood that.
Yeah.
And then it was so that is super vulnerable to be like, look, my house might be a mess. They literally might be kicking in a wall right now. Like,
Right.
especially like just sometimes anger problems exist. I had anger problems, but also too, like, I always took it out on a tree. That poor little tree never grew. It literally was like this little tiny stick all the way up, like just this long tree that just had like a dent in it from me beating the crap out of it. And I was like, that tree just never did well.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that poor tree didn't know what was happening. Sorry, people. I was like 11, so it was just how it was the place I could take out my anger.
Listen, we all have that. We all have
There
that
was a
thing.
moment,
Yeah.
but the vulnerability to invite someone into the crazy chaos.
Yep.
How did you manage just asking? Like, what did you fight that feeling for a while? Like, what did that look like? Because obviously, this has to have a relationship built to be able to do that. But
Yeah.
like, what? How did you? That like how did you process that because I feel like that's where like we always try to make sure our house is clean when people come over, we try to
Yep.
make sure we look the best, our kids look the best. So how did you say, you know what, enough is enough, I don't care anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was one time I was just desperate.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I was so desperate that,
It didn't
like,
matter. Yeah.
it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't care. And
Mm.
I didn't know if they were going to judge me, right? Like, I didn't know what that was going to look like,
Yeah.
because I think from the outside, we looked like we had everything together and we were, you know, um, and not that we didn't a lot of the times, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's always messy, in our
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah.
And, but I was desperate. I couldn't do it. My husband used to travel a lot for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was literally at home with everybody by myself.
Yeah.
And
uh, that's hard.
I needed somebody. But then after the first person that I invited in, it was not as scary to invite. I had like two or three people, that
Mm.
all lived close by that could get to my house quickly, that I was not afraid to say, hey, can you come sit with me? And one of the times, I mean, one of the ladies up the street didn't even come inside. She
Mm.
sat on my front porch.
Mm.
And so I could come out on my front porch and just breathe for a second with her.
That's like a scene right there. That's a Job moment right there where it could have gone very different. And I think
It
sometimes
could
with
have.
certain people, I love that you said that. It's like there are certain people I knew I was not going to call because it would
Yeah.
have been a different it would have been a Job situation of just judgment
Yeah.
and condemnation from them of like you could have handled that better. And it's like that if you know that that is how the person is, you do not call that person. Like
That's
you
not
just
it. That's not your person.
that ain't the person. But the other thing you said is like we heal in community. And this brought to a thought is that, a lot of people are like the mind can heal itself. Like what we do know is that the brain, and I'm reading this off of on Google. I did a quick Google search. Is that it actually says like the mind for the science of healing thoughts. It's from a Scientific American from 2016 says that there's research that actually suggests that the mind can play a part in the healing of our body. And what we know is that the neuroplasticity in our brain can create new neural connections that allows the brain to compensate for any injury or disease, and that it can regenerate brain cells and heal stuff like internally. And sometimes we're like, oh, the
Yep.
brain cells are dead, they're never going to recover. It's like, no, your brain can actually heal these things, but it has to be safe to do so. So
Yes.
this is why you were saying, like, you have to call the right person, because if you had done this with somebody who was not the right person, your brain, you would have still been in a dark, deep place, and it probably would have pushed you further.
Sure.
And that's what I just think of like, oh my gosh. So when you're building the relationships, again, like, you went through some church people. You were kind of like, hey, some of these groups are not where I'm going to share this vulnerably. I'm going to be
Yep.
very picky about who I share this with, not because I'm hiding, but because I need the best on my team.
Yep.
So, how did that start helping you find the healing in that?
Well, like you just said, I think that community provides a little bit of that mental shift in that
Mm,
brain growth
mm-hmm,
for us,
mm-hmm,
so that our body does settle a little bit. Our nervous system
mm,
settles a little bit through human connection.
yeah.
And so I started to know where I could go to feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
who I could go to feel safe, to get my body
Mm,
back into regulated mode,
yeah.
which gave me the ability, because I will tell you, without that, I don't know that I could have overcome to start doing some
Right.
of the healthy habits that helped other parts of my body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I needed the brain capacity to be able to think about meal planning.
Yeah. Oh,
um,
interesting how that works. It's all
yeah,
connected.
all connected.
Oh.
Well, and I'll tell you really what the one thing that kind of led me to community, to really seek that route, not in that one moment where I called somebody to the house, but where I learned to kind of seek out community, was one of those moments where I was in my closet just desperate. I opened up
Mm,
my Bible, and turned to Numbers 11. And Numbers 11 is, the Israelites are in the wilderness, and they're complaining about the manna that God is providing them.
mm.
And Moses cries out to God. And, in this season, I'd felt very, very distant from
Yeah.
God,
Mm,
just because mentally I was just in such a rough space. But Moses cries out to God, and he says, God, why did you give me these people? I didn't birth these people. This burden is too much for me to bear. Just kill me now. I can't handle it. And I thought, oh my gosh, God, that's my that's
right.
my cry.
Like, and
Um,
it literally is. It's like, this is, why is this my problem?
I
like,
know.
like, Lord, this is not what I signed up for, because
This
of
is not
trauma.
what I
This,
thought.
this deep, dark place though. And I want to say this because I know someone's going to listen and be like, well, he said that I did not birth these people, and that's a foster adoptive mindset. It's like, no, 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 no.
No.
It's the problem standing in front of us. It's the pain standing in front of it. Like, God, I didn't birth this pain. I did not want this
Yep.
pain. I did not ask for it. I did not know that this pain was going to be in my life.
Yep.
So it could be anything, any stressor that it's like, God, I didn't pray for this financial burden. I didn't
Yep.
pray for this job loss. I didn't pray for this person to verbally attack me. I didn't pray for this friendship to end. Like, why is this happening? And it's that the grief Moses felt wasn't it, obviously his was situational where it was the Israelites, but like sometimes we can
Yep.
look at this and go, oh, I have felt this level of deep pain of just
Yep.
like, Lord, why? And that's what you're talking about here.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's not my kids. It was just
Mm-hmm.
my life was hard, and I didn't know how to turn it around, right? Like I'm walking through this season not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
how do I change this?
Mm.
And so two things. One, I think it showed me, like, just because I'm in this situation, I'm in hard, doesn't mean God's turned his back on me.
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
And the second thing was, the answer that God gives Moses is community. And he
Mm.
says, okay, you're carrying all of this weight.
By yourself.
He goes, it's too much. We need to divide it out
Yeah.
to some other people.
Hmm. See, that's the hardest part because I already hear I'm pretending that we're in this conversation. I'm gonna be on the opposition. Sometimes what we do is we go, well, there's nothing I can give to somebody else. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, that's not true.
not
And
true.
I know you said your husband traveled a lot. So you were doing a lot of parenting by yourself. So you were basically a single parent when he was gone. But
Yep.
this is where the community can step in and you can say, I don't have the emotional capacity to cook dinner tonight. I
Yep.
need someone to do this.
Yep.
And I think, it's kind of funny. Someone said this to me recently. They were just like, Grubhub really took the community aspect away from what we can give somebody because now people just order it online. So it's like, even if you're like, well, I can't physically be there, I love that Grubhub exists. I love it because I could literally, if a friend is in, New York, North Carolina, Texas,
Yep.
wherever they are, I can send food from hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
And I love that I can do that. And that can take a load off for dinner for them tonight. But then there's the second piece where it's like you need to tell someone this is what you're taking for me.
Yep.
And no, you can't pass your kids off. No, you can't pass the financial strain and say you will give me this so I can cover my financial burden. That
Here.
would be cool.
Why don't you pay my car payment? Thank you.
Gracias. I don't. Anyway, I'm like, I don't know. Things come out, and I'm like, I don't know, but it's true. And it is that moment where there's a vulnerability moment, and you said, okay, not
Yep.
just going to your community, but saying this is what I need to give to you. And part of what you did was I need to know I'm not alone.
Yep.
Just sit with me.
Yep.
And then it takes, this is, I think, the hardest part is it takes that person saying yes. And sometimes
Yep.
we don't get that yes. But
Yep.
if we have the right people that we know have said, even if it comes to sit with you, I know that that's my person to call.
Yep.
So continue. What else what else happened?
Yeah, well, I'll also say that, people could provide anything. I think we have in our mind like, well, they could provide a food, but that's really all they can do. But I mean, I had a lady come do my laundry.
Mm, mm,
Um, and I mean, there's tons of things that people can do to take little pieces, and every little piece
yeah.
counts. But also, when I started to incorporate some of the healthy habits, I actually gained time because
Mm,
I didn't need a nap in the afternoon.
yeah.
I was more efficient in my day because
Yeah.
I had energy, I had mental clarity, I had motivation
Right.
that I didn't have before. And so I think people always say, "Hey, I don't have time for these habits." And I coach clients and I always tell them, "Listen, once you start doing the habits, you will actually make time for yourself." I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you will increase your productivity. And so you may
Yeah.
have the same 24 hours in a day, but you'll be able to get done twice as much because of the way that you're moving about your day.
And your brain woke up differently because you're giving you nutrition and water and rest. And that's
Yes.
been something that I think has been so crucial for me is that like people always are like, how do you do so much? And I'm like, sometimes I don't do it well. But
Yeah.
what I've
Yeah.
recognized is when I don't do it well, I don't get the right food and
Yeah.
sleep and
Yep.
water. And those
Yep.
like our body needs sleep and I'm not in my 20s anymore. I don't need to hustle the way that I hustled in my 20s. I'm not proving anything to anybody. But
Yep.
but with kids it's like you can't necessarily slow down. So what do you need to add to it to provide the energy to deal with the day? And when you lose 2 hours during the day to sleep and then you're sleeping 10 hours at night, that does warn your body's warning you like, hey, there's something happening here.
Yep.
And that's what I think is so surprising is that when you start to like, okay, instead of eating that mine's donuts and like nerd gummies, I don't know, they're really good. And when I'm stressed, I'm just like, give me those Hostess chocolate covered white donuts.
Okay.
And and I will eat them and then I'm like, oh, I feel like crap the next day.
Yeah.
And then instead it's like, okay, give me a stick of cheese, give me some turkey, give me a shake that is with protein and vegetables, and let me take my magnesium and vitamin D so that I'm okay. And I started to quickly see like, oh, I'm not needing that nap. Like you said, like, oh,
Yep.
that I'm still tired sometimes when I've had anxiety or panic. That's normal, but I shouldn't be feeling that 24/7.
Yep.
And that's what I think is so mind blowing to me about self care is that it, like you said, it's not self care is not eating your food. Self care is what you're putting in your body and what you're doing to rest. So
Yep.
what are some other things that you would say we need to understand to be able to step into that to make more time to be holistically okay?
Yeah. So I think walking was huge for me too. Just a huge
Mm-hmm.
habit that made a huge difference in my mental health and my relieving my stress and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's ways to do it. I can do it with my kids. That's
Yeah.
something I can do with my kids and it be a connecting activity for us all to do together. There are most of the time I like to do it alone because that's my time where I can listen to stuff. I can pray. I can you know, kind of have some moments of mental quietness.
Mm-hmm.
I am an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yep. Same.
So I thrive
We
on
are
my
out there.
time. Listen,
We are out
um,
there. We are
I
struggling, but we are fine.
it's fine. It's fine. um, I thrive on some quiet space where I can kind
Mm-hmm.
of think through things. And so that walking has been huge. But the one thing that surprised me the most that I think most people don't connect is how it affected my parenting and how it
Mm-hmm.
affected my kids.
Mm.
Um I gained time because my household felt better
Mm.
and it was more warm and inviting
Yes.
and my kids were more relaxed
Mm-hmm.
and some of their meltdowns went away and I realized like some of their stuff was not because of their past, it was because of me.
Mm.
Because they can feed off of my stress, right? Just like I can be the calm for them when they are stressed, I can also provide stress
Yeah.
for them
I
when
w-
I'm not doing the right things.
I was taking a certificate for trauma informed training, and one of the things that the main psychologist said was we need to stop making children regulate their environments, and we need to start making parents regulate the environment. And
Yeah.
I was like, dang, because
Yeah.
so many of us are having our kids try to regulate their environment when it's
Yep.
us as the adult in the room that needs to regulate it.
Yep.
So and our kids, like you're so right, our kids feed off of our energy, and they feed off of if they feel like maybe what we're doing is putting them into fight or flight mode, maybe
Yep.
what we've said or how we slam the door or how we have done things has kind of perpetrated that for them internally, and they're just like, oh, mom's off again, dad's off again. They're at it, like even the sternness in our voice can set a child to be like, oh, I'm gonna fight back.
Yep.
So what were some ways that were kind of like what were some shifts that you did kind of instantly, and which ones kind of took more time when it came to shifting the environment with your kids?
Yeah. I would say I started to my willingness and ability to be patient and connected, well connected with my kids
Mm-hmm.
shifted almost immediately.
Mm.
Um my and not that I didn't connect with them before whatever, but I had lost my playfulness a little bit.
Mm. Mm.
Um and so being able to get that I think shifted right away. But pretty quickly, I mean, I would say a month in,
Wow.
um, at, like the whole house regulated differently.
Dang. That's wild.
Wild. I mean, very, very, very interesting to watch the whole environment shift. In the way that it did. Now, I mean, all the meltdowns and, like
That's
the
normal.
trauma
That still
didn't
happens. Yeah.
just my trauma didn't just disappear, their trauma didn't just
No, but
disappear. Nobody's stuff
you
just
went from
disappeared.
probably like tense conversations, slamming doors, arguments to more regulated to like, hey, didn't mean to slam the door. Hey, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's take a minute and breathe. Like there
Yep.
it you slowed it down. So then
Yep.
over time it was like, ooh, we're feeling a little off. Let's take a minute. Let's all go for a walk real quick. Hey,
Yep.
go take a shower, see if the water can help calm your nerves a little bit. Let's get some water, some food. Like it is something like I've watched when you see a shift of environment, it is one of those things that you're like, hold the phone. Like what
Yeah.
happened? But you also feel the shift when it's out of alignment. When it's on the
Yep.
opposite side, it's like you walk in and it's in the air and you're just like, ooh, oh, it's tense in here. Like,
Yep.
why? Like, your kid's filling up water. Would you stop filling up the water? Like, what's happening? Like, I've been in those moments where it's like they're just getting water. And
Yep.
I've been irritated. And that's not a them issue, that's a me issue. And I need to
Yep.
address that. And that's where you're right. Like it is one of those things that you can quickly, now I wouldn't say quickly shift, but it does shift because you're dealing with the environment. I
Yep.
love that.
Well, and I will say over time, I also have watched, this probably took a little bit longer, but I have watched them be more prone to choose healthy options or to be
Mm,
able to see, hey, I need to go outside for a minute, or I need to jump on the trampoline for a minute, or
mm.
I need some protein in
They're
this moment.
noticing that too. But you
Yep.
also said you realized you weren't playing as much with
Yep.
what does that look like if you were like, okay, so maybe were you being more like stern or like just more of like it's
I
always
wouldn't
about
say stern.
discipline or like what was that? What tell me what that was.
Well, I wouldn't say stern, but like I would sit and read with the kids or something of the sort. Or I homeschool.
Mhm.
And so even in my teaching, like I would teach not necessarily being stern, just being regular. um
Got it.
but but now there is a playfulness that happens where I'm intentional about being playful with my tone. And even if we are reading a book instead of playing a game or something, like really getting back to like using voices and, laughing with my kids, making funny faces at them.
Yeah.
And I can
Yeah.
say something, if I'm being serious, I can say something that's stern to them to show that I'm serious, but then I can make a face afterwards to let them know that they're okay. Like that
Yeah. So you go
relationally things
from
are fine.
so kind of like going from like a checklist of like we just got to get this done
Yep.
to no, we have time to laugh, we can pause from
Yep.
this, we
Yep.
can joke about the voice of what it should sound like, so that way it's more it is more connecting versus
Yep.
just to-do list. That makes
Yep.
sense. I like
Or
that.
even like, I mean, in the beginning, we might go for walks and stuff, and I might take them on some of my walks and we would walk together. Or my kids and I walk downtown. We live downtown in a small town. There's a farmer's market on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday mornings in the summer. And so we do that. But it was just like we're walking down there. But like now we'll have races. Do you know what I'm
Mm,
saying?
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
racing one another and stuff, just kind of adding in a
Loosen
little bit
up.
more
Yeah,
playfulness
to loosen up.
because
Mm-hmm.
my brain is able to loosen up. It
Yeah.
wasn't able to
Yeah.
before.
It's like it's funny because I have a 2 year old and I'm thinking of like all the ways that just like simple playing with her is. And one of the things that we did, she loves is Play-Doh.
Yep.
And so I noticed, kind of like bath time would get really, really rushed. And so it was like, okay, she's playing with Play-Doh. And then it's like, okay, now let's go to bath time. Like, let's just get you washed up and then out instead of just letting her
Yep.
play. And then
Yep.
she would get out and then she would be like, okay, now it's bedtime. And it's like, she's like, wait, I want to watch Mickey Mouse. I want to play with my Play-Doh. So it's now
She's
that
like,
she's like, she wants to play. And so it's funny to watch her. She likes to lick my face sometimes. So, and she starts like, she'll be laying there. So it's like, if I'm rushing and I can see that I'm
yeah.
rushing her, she starts to get very frustrated and tries to turn everything into a game. And so it's
Yep.
like, okay, we're brushing your teeth. It's a game now. And I'm like, no, I need to brush your teeth. And so now it's like, okay, I got to make it a game, make it funny, with the Play-Doh, rolling it out. And then we're like breaking it and going, oh, oops. And then put it back together and be like, it's okay. Cause she started apologizing a lot. We're like, oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. And I was like, why is she apologizing so much? And I think it's because she just
Yep.
got into like thinking things weren't like she just learned the word, but it was like everything like she topple something over, she'd knock it down, and it was just like, oh no, you're good. But if I'm not in tune with that, in tune with
Yeah.
like, oh, she wants to watch Mickey Mouse, in tune with like her little giggle is starting because she wants to lick my face, and it's supposed to be laying down, and I'm like, no, like instead of being like, no, don't, like to be like, no, just go to sleep, and me being
Yep.
okay with saying, you know what, this extra 10 minutes at bedtime is not going to hurt
Yep.
her, to just be
Yep.
like, don't do it. And then she'll do it. And I'm like, no. And she thinks it's so funny. And now when like
Yeah.
Play-Doh breaks or something falls, she's like, oh, and she'll pick it back up. And it's because she was watching how maybe I was reacting, where I'm like, oh no. And to her, she's like, oh no, I did something wrong. Now it's like, oh no. And it's just that little tone that changes. It
Yep.
now has changed her reaction. Now I'm 15, 10 years old. You're not going to do the same thing. Like, it'd be kind of weird if my 15-year-old brother at the time started licking my face. I'd be like, what are you doing? That's weird. But a 2-year-old, it's like they're being two, but it's like, okay, now let's find age appropriate. Okay, we're walking, go run, let's run. And it's not run because you're in trouble. It's like, let's make this fun. Climb the
Yep.
tree. It's totally fine. Don't break your arm, please. Like, just
Right.
be
Right.
safe.
Yes.
But I love that, because I think we forget. I'm a to-do list person. And so
Me
sometimes
too.
I'm in a rush, and it's
Yep.
hard to rush kids. So now, like, she makes everything a game. Putting her clothes on is a game. She'll run, and I'm like, Harper, we gotta go. And she's like, and I'm like, okay, now I'm just gonna account for her time to do that in the morning versus like
Yes.
trying to rush her every single day. Let's build that time in to their
Yep.
schedule, if that helps. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is like, build it into your schedule. Be task
Yes.
oriented, but build the fun in, so that
Yes.
way they're not sitting going, oh, I'm not allowed to have fun.
Yeah. Well, play disarms that fear response in
Mm-hmm.
our bodies. And it helps our kids' brain develop.
Mm.
Not only does it help their brain develop, but it actually helps ours too.
Yes, it does.
Um,
Yeah. I
and
didn't
I
even think
think
about that.
I think we forget, like as
Yeah.
adults, that we need those playful moments.
Yeah. I love that. Do you have anything else you would like to add before we end?
No, I'm good.
I love that. So our takeaway is self-care. It may not be with food at right away. It may not be with exercise. And I think that's really where we go with a lot of self-care. It's about
Yep.
putting stuff back in. Let's play again. Like, learn. I
Yep.
think that has been such the healing thing since having my daughter, is just learning how to play and be
Yep.
like, close the computer, put the phone down, sit on the floor, play with Play-Doh.
Yep.
Let her lick your face. She's 2. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, I don't want this. But it is like, to see her joy, where she's just like, it's so cute, because she does that, where she's like, she looks over and she goes, and then she like just attacks you, and you're like, oh my God. But it makes me step back and go, I'm so thankful that she's learned that she can just be funny. And
Yes.
now what do I do as an adult? That's how we heal internally, is sometimes that little kid in us, we forgot how to play. As adults,
Yeah.
that's so healing. Is just not just a video game or watching a movie. It's like, what if we just went outside and climbed a tree? Like, what if,
Right.
let's see like what joy do you come and be like, I haven't done that since I was a little kid. And I think we see that in like elderly care, when they're like
Yep.
hearing the music of their
Yeah.
youth, that suddenly they've found that in like Parkinson's or dementia, is that they haven't talked in years, and then they started playing music that was around when they were teenagers or young adults, and you see them start to dance and smile and sing, and they're like, they don't talk. This is healing, to be a
Yeah.
child again internally, to be a young adult again, to have fun. And I think that we often forget that. So self-care is to go do something that can make you laugh and enjoy life. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. Do you have anything before we end? Do you have anything else you would like to say?
No, thank you so much. I've had such a great time
Absolutely.
here.
You guys also make sure that you follow along, listen. You can follow Nicole. You could ask her questions. You put comments in to ask questions. But just remember, go out and play today. Have a great day, you guys.